There are more than $2 billion in private development, either under construction or fully approved here in Cape Coral right now. Add in a bridge replacement, a major road widening project, and a handful of other city projects that have been years in the making, and this is genuinely one of the biggest stretches of change that this city has ever seen. It is a lot of money, and I'm not just going to throw numbers at you. We are going to walk through and talk through what those dollars are actually buying. So you've probably seen the arguing about it online. Half the comments think this is the best thing that's ever happened to Cape Coral, and the other half thinks it's absolutely ruining this place. Now, I'm not here to settle that debate today, but I am going to actually walk you through what's happening project by project, what it is, what's included, and what it's costing. So none of these numbers just land as some scary headline without any context behind them. Hi, I'm Jaycee Kolev with the Kolev Group, and I track this because my clients ask me about this consistently. Is it a good sign? Is it a red flag? Should it change what I offer on a home 3 blocks away? Now for these, I'm not just looking at what's floating out there around Facebook. I have done the research on these projects. So here is the plan. I am covering the 3 biggest private developments reshaping the map, the infrastructure that's trying to keep up with all of it, and every major project the city itself has underway in Southeast Cape Coral. We're going to go project by project, real numbers, real context. Now, I'm going to be touching on a couple of the concerns that people have along the way, but the full breakdown of whether those concerns actually hold up is going to get its own video entirely in the future. So keep an eye out for that one as well. All right, so let's talk the 3 private developments. Now, I want to give you a quick bit of context before we dive in. Cape Coral's population sits at a roughly 228,000 people right now. And by the city's own projections, we're going to be at 250,000 by 2030 and as much as 375,000 by 2050. That's the backdrop for literally everything on this list. Developers aren't guessing that people are coming. The city's own numbers are saying that they're already on their way. So let's start with the 3 private developments that are actually reshaping the map of this city. Now, first up is the 7 Islands project. This is officially named the Gulf Gateway Resort and Marina Village. This is 47 acres of city-owned land off of Old Burnt Store Road in Northwest Cape Coral. Quick piece of context most people don't know about: these islands aren't natural. They're leftover dredge spoil from when the original canals were dug back in the 70s. So these are 7 narrow man-made strips of land that have just stayed vacant for 50 years. The city sold the property to a developer called Forest Development for $20 million. And what's going up there is genuinely massive. There's up to 995 residential units, a mix of both condos, apartments, and single-family homes, a 10-story, 240-room hotel carrying the Marriott brand, a public marina, 19,000 square feet of hotel meeting space, and nearly 46,000 square feet of commercial space for restaurants, retail, and a tiki bar. There's also an entire island set aside just for public use, where they're going to have a splash pad, a dog park, an amphitheater, a kayak launch, a food truck park, and it's all going to be connected to the rest of the development by a pedestrian and golf cart bridge. So one thing worth noting on this: the city itself bought this land more than a decade ago for $13.2 million back when it was sitting in foreclosure. So long before forest development ever showed up, and the last major hurdle here was environmental. The Army Corps of Engineers permits for dredging and the seawalls were submitted back in 2023 and have only recently cleared. All in all, most estimates put the total project value somewhere between $650 million and $1 billion. City Council approved it unanimously back in January of 2026, and the developer officially closed on the land in February. And as of this recording, in summer of 2026, they're targeting the start of civil construction for this fall, and the full build-out is expected to take about a decade. For the next one, we're staying up in Northwest Cape Coral, and we have Cape Coral Grove. This is 131 acres on Pine Island Road, right next to Bubba's Roadhouse, that is turning into the closest thing that this city has ever had to an actual town center. So for decades, the complaint about Cape Coral has always been there's nowhere to go without crossing the bridge into Fort Myers. I disagree, but we're going to put that aside. So this is the project built specifically to answer that. Here's what's actually going in. There's going to be around 1,200 upscale apartment residences, a 125-room luxury hotel, and more than 350,000 square feet of retail, dining, and entertainment space. This is all going to be anchored by a high-end grocery store. On top of that, we're going to get a movie theater, a bowling alley, a live music venue, and even a comedy club, which I'm really excited about. And plus, there's going to be 2 public parks and more than 5,400 free parking spaces, which we all know we need. The developers are even planning for up to 200 community events a year, like farmers markets, outdoor concerts, that kind of thing. The price tag on this is $700 million, but it is a private investment. And the city projects that it will generate about $1.3 billion in economic impact over the time. Infrastructure construction is already underway as of this summer, and the first buildings are expected to break ground this fall. We're headed a little further north for this one, and it just broke a Lee County record. Hudson Creek is the largest land deal in county's history. A developer paid $100 million for more than 1,700 acres in the far northwest part of the city. So to give you a little quick context on that $100 million is just what they paid for the raw, undeveloped land. That doesn't include a dollar of actual construction yet. What's approved for that land is enormous. So we're talking 3,500 total housing units, including as many as 2,500 single-family homes, an assisted living facility with room for 800 beds, a proposed university that could eventually hold 3,000 students, 425,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space, and 150,000 square feet of office space. About 700 of the 1,732 acres are being preserved as wetlands, with more than 12,000 buffer plants going in around them. The buyer, by the way, is 4Star. They're a subsidiary of D.R. Horton, one of the largest home builders in the country. So this isn't a small local developer testing the waters. This is one of the biggest builders in America betting on this specific stretch of Cape Coral. So it's already approved in zone, but there is a catch on this. None of it can actually be built until the city's utility extension project physically reaches that site, which isn't expected till around 2027. So this one's real, it's approved, but it's still years away from breaking ground. All 3 of these big projects sit within a few miles of each other in the northwest part of the city. That's not a coincidence. That tells you exactly where Cape Coral's next decade of growth is actually concentrated. Projects at this scale always come with real questions about traffic and environmental impact. Now, I'm going to save that conversation for another video, but right now, let's talk about whether the roads can actually handle any of this at all. For starters, we're going to head down to the Cape Coral Bridge. This is one of the bridges that connects you to Fort Myers. It crosses over the Caloosahatchee River, and this one is the southernmost bridge across the river, which makes it the main artery between the 2 cities. Now, right now, it has 4 lanes total, 2 across, 2 spans. One of those was built in 1963 and the other in 1989. More than 50,000 vehicles cross it every single day, and traffic engineers have rated it level of service F during peak hours. That is the worst rating there is. It is failing. The plan is to fully replace both spans with 2 new 3-lane bridges. So we're going to have 6 lanes total. We're going to get wider shoulders, better lighting, a dedicated path for pedestrians and cyclists, which we've never had, and a redesigned intersection on the Fort Myers side that's built specifically to fix one of the worst merge points in the county. If you've been there at Fort Myers and McGregor, you know. That merge point, if you've never driven it, has been called out by county transportation officials as the bottleneck that backs traffic up on McGregor during peak hours. The new design adds a dedicated U-turn lane specifically to fix that one intersection, plus a brand new pedestrian bridge for anyone crossing on foot or bike. Now, depending on which estimate you look at, the total project runs somewhere between $325 million up to $548 million, and Lee County is currently trying to land a $250 million federal grant to help cover it. Design work is about 90% complete. The county's working through buying the remaining right-of-way, and construction is expected to start somewhere in 2027 or 2028. There's a companion project as well, and that is widening Burnt Store Road and replacing a second bridge along that corridor. This is specifically to add capacity for North Cape Coral, which is exactly where Seven Islands and Hudson Creek, those ones that we talked about, are going in. That one's priced around $226 million, and whether it moves forward on schedule actually depends partly on whether that federal grant for the Cape Coral Bridge comes through. If the county gets the full grant, they can shift money they've already set aside towards this project instead. Bottom line on infrastructure, the roads are playing catch up, and realistically, that's going to take a few more years no matter what. There's one more piece of infrastructure that I don't think people talk about enough, even though it's arguably more important than the bridge if you're looking at a property in Northwest Cape Coral, and that is the city's Utility Extension Project, or UEP. They are bringing city water and sewer out to parts of Cape that are still on well and septic. The North 1 West phase started back in 2022 and is expected to wrap up this year. The next phase, North 3, covers areas west of Burnt Store Road up towards Kismet Parkway. By the end of 2027, the plan is to have all utilities running all the way north along Burnt Store Road to the city limits, which is exactly what opens up roughly 2,000 acres of previously unbuildable land, including the site for Hudson Creek. So when I told you earlier that Hudson Creek is waiting on utilities before it can break ground, this is the project they're actually waiting on. One more infrastructure item I want to talk about, but this one is already done, and that is the Chiquita Lock. It is a water control structure in the South Spreader Canal that was removed earlier this year. So if you boat the canal system, that is a real tangible win because it makes traversing that waterway safer and noticeably more convenient. There's no more waiting on a lock cycle, especially when you're headed back after 4th of July and you got a line. Now, if you're weighing a move here, timing against these infrastructure gaps actually matters because it can change which part of the city makes sense for you right now versus in 5 years. So that's exactly why we built out the free Cape Coral relocation guide to walk you through all of it. The link's in the description below. All right, now let's shift to the projects that the city itself is funding with your tax dollars, because this next part has had a much rougher few years, and it's honestly the piece most people are actually upset about right now. Now I'm going to take a deep breath before I say this name because it brings a lot of controversy along with it, and that is Jaycee Park. This park sits right on the Caloosahatchee River at the end of Beach Parkway. The city tore down the old park, including removing a bunch of Australian pine trees that were classified as an invasive species, and rebuilt it basically from scratch. What they put back in is a new waterfront boardwalk, a band shell for events, a splash pad, a full playground complex, and a food truck court with concessionary agreement for food and drinks. But that tree removal, that came with its own small controversy. And small may not be the right word there, because the city said the pines had to go because they're classified as invasive. But plenty of longtime residents pushed back hard on losing the shade and the look of the park that they grew up with. The project was originally estimated at $12 million back when it was approved in 2023. But by the time it was actually built, the cost had grown to around $18 million. It just recently opened back in the spring, and the controversy hasn't stopped yet because there have been some issues with the draining. And for $18 million, taxpayers expected a little bit more. For the next one, we're going to head a little bit further south, but this is arguably one of the most controversial developments right now here in Cape Coral, and that is the Yacht Club. And I want to explain exactly what this is because the price tag on this one doesn't mean anything without the context. Now, the Yacht Club has been Cape Coral's waterfront hub since 1962, before Ian came along. There was a beach, a marina, a pool, a ballroom, a restaurant, basically the closest thing that the city had to like a little downtown gathering spot or something for tourists. Hurricane Ian tore through it though in 2022 and destroyed most of it. The building was absolutely destroyed. The seawall was a mess. A big chunk of the marina was a disaster. And instead of just repairing what was there, the city decided to fully reimagine the entire site into a much bigger resort-style destination. Here's what's actually planned. A 2-story community center about 3 times the size of the 2 buildings it's replacing. Resort-style pools roughly 6 times the size of the old pool. A 4-story parking garage, new floating and fixed boat docks, rebuilt beach bathrooms, and a completely rebuilt marina with new seawalls. The city's last released cost breakdown put the parking garage at $38 million, the community center at about $45 million, the docks at $7 million, the beach restrooms at $4 million, and the resort-style pool at $11 million. with an initial phase covering the fueling system, utilities, and the beach amenities priced at $35 million. Add it all up, and the city's last confirmed estimate for the whole project landed at around $225 million. As of this spring, officials have said there is still no locked-in final number because council hasn't approved a final scope for the project yet. So when you hear the $225 million yacht club, now you know what that actually is. It's not just a park bench upgrade, but a near total rebuild of the city's signature waterfront destination. And then there's Bimini Basin East, a stretch of land in South Cape Coral that the city bought up after Hurricane Ian because it was officially deemed blighted. The vision the city's put out is a real mixed-use live, work, play kind of destination. So they want to have a boutique hotel or craft brewery, an observation tower, a boardwalk, a parking garage, retail and office space, mixed-use residential, possibly a marina, and even a pedestrian bridge connecting it across Cape Coral Parkway to the yacht club area. Now, before the city bought this land, it was a mix of aging, storm-damaged commercial buildings, duplexes, apartment buildings along Cape Coral Parkway that took a beating during Ian, and they never fully recovered. So rather than let private owners rebuild piecemeal, the city and its South Cape Community Redevelopment Agency decided to buy the parcels outright and start over with one coordinated plan instead. Here's the number that actually matters right now, though. The city and its redevelopment agency have already spent more than $45 million just acquiring the land and tearing down what was on it. And none of that is construction. It's land and demolition. The city went looking for a private developer to actually build any of this back in October, and as of the most recent update, they've gotten 0 responses. Honestly, this is where most of the real day-to-day frustration locally comes from, more than the private growth does, and don't you worry, that's part of why I'm digging into it in another video as well. There are a few more things worth knowing about because you'll actually notice these before any of the other major projects, and a few of these will help you notice where businesses are looking to invest their money. So Cape Coral is getting its first ever technical college. It's going to be opening this fall, and it's designed specifically to train the workforce that's going to be needed to actually build and staff everything else on this list. There's a new format Walmart Supercenter on the way, which is the kind of flagship store that Walmart only builds where it's confident in the long-term customer base. Plus, we're getting a Marriott TownePlace Suites extended stay hotel that's going to be aimed at business travelers and families in transition. Then we have exciting news about Bones Coffee, which is actually headquartered right here in Cape Coral. They sell nationally through Safeway and Albertsons, and recently they did a partnership with Disney around the Star Wars launch. And they're investing $27 million into an expansion that supports its 75 existing employees and adds about 55 new jobs, plus a retail storefront. And on the park side, Crystal Lake Park already reopened this summer after a $10 million renovation that added a hillside lookout, and Festival Park keeps expanding as an event space, adding more festivals and events every year as the city grows into it. So that's the real picture, not just the headlines, but what's actually being built, what it includes, and what it's costing. We had 3 major private developments genuinely moving forward with well over $2 billion combined. We've got infrastructure playing catch up for the next couple of years, and the city is working through its own projects with a price tag that's grown steadily, and at least one project, Bimini Basin East, is still waiting for anyone to actually build it. With this city adding tens of thousands of new residents over the next decade, all of this, the good, the stalled, and everything in between, is only going to keep moving. And don't worry, I'm covering whether people's concerns about this actually hold up in a future video, so make sure you subscribe so you can catch that. And if you're genuinely thinking about moving here and you want help figuring out if Cape Coral is the place for you, don't forget to take our free 2-minute city quiz. It's linked below, and we will see you in the next one.